Good afternoon, dear participants, our esteemed panelists. I welcome all the participants of the one-week International Faculty Development Program on accelerating equality and empowerment of women in all spheres from 8th May to 12th May 2023, organized by the Department of Management and Social Sciences, Amity University in Tashkent. We are glad to announce that more than 700 participants have registered from the FDP from more than 10 different countries, ladies and gentlemen. And to start with, I would request Dr. Anita Banerjee, Head and Associate Professor, Department of Management and Social Sciences, and convener of the FDP to address the participants.
A very good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Shalki. A very good afternoon. So, as we all know, gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but it is a necessary foundation for a peaceful, progressive, and sustainable world. Though the world over has made certain progress over the last decade, but still we have not achieved gender equality in terms of the SDG goal mandated by the United Nations, SDG goal number 5. So the focus or the objective of this FDP is to provide the spotlight on women and address the status quo with respect to women in all spheres. We are very fortunate to have amongst us a panel of distinguished speakers, scholars, who would like to give us deep insights about women empowerment in its various aspects, right from feminism to education to health to financial inclusion, and touching upon a gamut of various other issues. So without wasting many more time, I hand over to Dr. Shalki for further addresses.
Thank you, Dr. Anita, for your valuable insights. I now request our Deputy Director, ma'am, Amity University in Tashkent, Dr. Naina Chaudhary, ma'am, to address the participants of the FDP. Ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Shalki. I'd like to congratulate the organizing team for inviting such esteemed speakers to enlighten the gathering, and the kind of participation that we are viewing. More than 700 participants is wonderful. It's a laudable work by the organizing team. Professor Patel, Professor Paramita, I'm seriously mesmerized when I saw your profiles, the kind of work that you have been doing in these areas, and not just where we are living, not just in India, not just in the home country, but so many places, and trying to study this issue. It was the main theme, apart from the SDG 5 that Dr. Banerjee has just mentioned, achieving gender equality in the UN General Assembly in 2020. This was the main theme. And it was observed that the regressive social norms are restricting the participation of women across all spheres of life. We are working women, so we feel that why accelerating? It is already accelerated. And but even now, a large percentage of women are fighting for their rights, fighting against social violence, domestic violence. There's such potential which is yet to be explored, and due to the social norms, the women are way behind than where they should be ideally. I always feel that their biological clocks also don't support their progress. It is normally at the time when we should put our focus in our career. We are busy in having babies and raising the kids and focusing towards the family. So against all those odds, if the women is able to lead in all these spheres of life, I believe that they have much more potential in themselves, and they can grow a lot further. I would like to hear the experts on this. This is really a topic that I'm personally very interested in, and I'm sure all the participants are also looking forward to hear from you. So I will, with best wishes to all the participants, to the speakers, to the organizing team, on behalf of our director, Mr. Babar, he was also looking forward to this FDP for very long, but because of his business trip, he had to go to London. But I'd like to convey his best wishes too. All the best, and looking forward to these amazing 2 days. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your constant support. Ladies and gentlemen, with the blessing of the respected founder president, sir, of Amity Education Group, Dr. Ashok Chauhan, sir, in the guidance of our Honorable Chancellor, sir, Amity Universities, Dr. Atul Chauhan, sir, under the leadership of our beloved trustee, Amity Education Group, Mr. Amol Chauhan, sir, and with the constant support of esteemed Group Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Gurinder Singh, sir, we hereby start the 1-week International Faculty Development Program on Accelerating Equality and Empowerment of Women in All Spheres, organized by the Department of Management and Social Sciences, Amity University in Tashkent. I'm glad to introduce our first speaker of the FDP is Professor Vibhuti Patel, Vice President, Indian Association of Women's Studies. Dr. Vibhuti Patel is currently the Vice President of Indian Association of Women's Studies. Ma'am retired as Professor, Advanced Center of Women's Studies, School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Prior to that, ma'am retired as Professor and Head of Economics Department of SNDT Women's University. She was also the Director, Postgraduate Studies and Research of SNDT Women's University. She did her doctorate in economics from University of Mumbai and was awarded a postdoctoral fellowship from Association of Commonwealth Universities to conduct a research at the London School of Economics and Political Science, UK. During last 3 years and a half decade, Professor Vibhuti Patel has presented papers and been a resource person in several national and international seminars, workshops, collaborative research projects, training programs, and conferences on economics and development studies with gender perspectives in various parts of India and abroad. Ma'am, we are glad that you are here. I request you to please address.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, friends. And I'm really touched by the enormous participation that we have had from 10 countries. And I think I commend and I congratulate the organizing team. I also offer my respectful thanks to all the 11 resource persons. Just one word from us and they have agreed to give their session. And they are also internationally renowned and veteran feminists who have been both contributed both in terms of feminist praxis and also they are public intellectuals of great repute. My presentation, we are starting with the feminist foreign policy. And I have my PPT. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Anita Banerjee, Dr. Balfi Manhas, Mr. Amol Chauhan, Mr. Professor Gurinder Singh, Mr. Babur Abdullah, and Dr. Naina Chaudhary and Mr. Parveen Sharma for their hard work and also for giving us this opportunity to address this platform. And I think we need, as Madam told us that the UN had declared on 8th of March that how gender norms are coming in the way, and it was declared violence against women, which exacerbated during the pandemic, that it was declared as a shadow pandemic. So we are in a situation where we see varied forms of violence against women. And currently, globally also, the question of feminist foreign policy has become extremely important. Looking at the geopolitical situation and the kind of mind-boggling issues that we are facing in the context of Sustainable Development Goals and goal number 5. Now, the presentation of mine, which is about the accelerating equality and empowerment through feminist foreign policy, which is a very important concern for since the Second World War. And it was India had taken a lead, and it was Indian representative, Dr. Hansaben Mehta, who had raised a question about perspective of the UN at that time, which had declared the Universal Declaration for Men. And there was 50% of the world's population was not there. It is from that time we are seeing that feminist perspectives, maybe the terminology was not there, but the feminist perspective of inclusive growth, inclusive development, being respectful towards the dignity and human rights of women was very much there. But formally, if we say that the feminist foreign policy, Sweden was the first one to adopt it as a state policy. It was in 2014. What we saw after that, it was Canada, which also talked about this thing, both in terms of feminist international assistance policy. The UK Labour Party had also announced it in 2018. And in France, Mexico, Luxembourg, they gave a commitment towards feminist foreign policy. And Mexico also launched the feminist foreign policy debates and dialogue immediately. What we see is that, so if we see the whole course trajectory of evolution of feminist policy, its genesis lies in first, as I told you, in the discourse on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and 3 generations of human rights that we talked about. That was the civil and political rights, and there were other entitlements, cultural rights of people. But it was in 1970s that we saw the new women's rights movement, and which challenged the whole course of the post-war development, which had bypassed women. The development had completely bypassed. There was a marginalization of women from economy, from politics, and from cultural lives, and there were gender gaps widening in all areas. And it was in that context that the whole discourse, and the Danish economist Esther Bosrup, who wanted to deconstruct the polygamy in Africa, and she wanted to examine how the patriarchy operates. And her book, which she wrote based on her participatory action research, she stayed with the people. She observed how men and women were operating in the society. And she found out that 56 African countries had wild animals were there, but domestic animals were not there, which could be used for agriculture. There was no agricultural technology, so the human labor became extremely important. Africa had a 500 years of history of slavery, where most of the able-bodied men were taken to build the empire by the imperial forces. And Africa also had a patriarchy, but that patriarchy was very different. It did not discriminate in terms of food, care, and nurturance between boys and girls, men and women. And that's why African women were as healthy and as sturdy as men. And looking at all this situation, and plus Africa did not have pressure on land. There was a vast amount of land which people could cultivate. Main thing was that where you need human labor. And in this context of shortage of men and surplus of women, because there were 2,500 women for 1,000 men, because of the history of slavery, and polygamy in Africa flourished. And they said that this is the basis. There was nothing that African men were extraordinarily, they had a huge libido. That was not the situation. The political economy created a situation where women's labor became extremely important. And if you had more women and more children, when you don't have technology, then you can cultivate more land. That explained polygamy in Africa. A person with more wives and more children would become more powerful in the village economy. What she wanted to understand was how patriarchy operated. What she ended up finding out was that the women's labor, paid and unpaid labor of women, is central, and especially in the subsistence economy, the women's labor, whether it's a collection of fuel, water, animal care, kitchen gardening, they all are not marketed, they are not paid, but they are the mainstay. They ensure food security and food sovereignty. Now, this book which she wrote, you can download that book, Women's Role in Economic Development. It had a ripple effects. Leaders of 165 countries who were members of United Nations, they all were highly impressed. And United Nations started ECOSOC, Economic and Social Status of Women, wing within the UN, and asked all 165 member countries to come up with the Status of Women's report. Our country, India, also gave the report, which was called Towards Equality, and that report had to be debated in the parliament. So first time that complacency about women's question, that, oh, in a modern society, women enjoy saying equal status, that was shattered. Because this reports brought out that there was a wide gender gap in the area of education, in the area of work participation, in the area of political participation, and also the gender-based violence, about which no public debate was there. So in 1970, Esther Bosserup's book that created this thing that we need to, women are marginalized from the economy. We have to integrate women into economy. That approach is known as a WID approach, women in development approach. In 1975, when all these reports were being debated, the United Nations decided to declare 1975 as an International Women's Year. It was realized that 1 year is not enough to address such a complex questions of women. For 5,000 years of patriarchal value system had created so much of misogyny and so much of bias against women that we needed 10 years. So 1975 to 85 were declared as an International Women's Decade. In 1980, the mid-decade review was taken, and the conference was in Mexico. And there they said that, look, welfare approach will not do. That women are not just the recipient of, they are not the sponge on the economy, they are the active agent of the economy. Main thing is that women have to be part of the economic development. So many new organizations which emerge in the several parts of the world, including in India, SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association, where they mobilize women in the unorganized sector and the self-employed women. Fisher Folks Union, the new technologies were making fisher women totally marginal. So their association took place. Women who were into handicraft industry and all, they were also getting the modern mass production was making their livelihood. It was also striking at the base of their livelihood. They were getting organized, and they said that development process is going in a one way, and women have to get mobilized, and self-mobilization is the answer. Once you get united, and from Latin America, the slogan came, women united will never be defeated. And it was in this context that women and development approach, from women in development to women and development approach came. And by the time we had an end of the decade conference in 1985 in Nairobi, one realized that if you are focusing only on women, you are negotiating power from the point of weakness, because women are at the bottom of the economy. What we need to do, that along with self-mobilization, we also need to gender sensitize. The focus should not only be on patriarchy, focus should be on gender, because gender is a social construct which creates a power relation, subordination, domination relationship. And we also, and gender is not given by Mother Nature or by God. We have created gender relations, and gender relations are different in different society, at a different historical stage and in different geographical location. We can change this unequal gender relations by very conscious intervention, by progressive policies, by legal reforms, by having a very advanced constitution. And gender in development approach became very popular during the 90s. Then by 2000, by the millennium, this thing, because so many countries were going through tremendous human misery because of the stabilization policies of the country, there was a hunger, and there was a lot of people falling out of the economy. There were 8 types of major dangers that the world was facing. So in 20, like the question was that what we need is a transformative approach. All our policies, programs, schemes, strategies, all have to have a social transformation. And by then, 190 countries who were members of United Nations, they gathered in Washington and they came up with a consensus that what we need is a Millennium Development Goals. 8 Millennium Development Goals addressing hunger and poverty, universalization of education, empowerment of women, that was a goal number 3. Reduction in HIV/AIDS, that was HIV/AIDS was a very important challenge that the whole planet faced. Reduction in malaria, dengue, tuberculosis, improving maternal health, reducing child mortality, environment and sustainable development, peace and global cooperation. So these 8 goals were accepted by all world leaders, and we accepted this transformative policy. And by 2010, so many women from the post-colonial countries and also some of the Afro-American intellectuals, they say that we should have an intersectional approach because there are various types of multiple marginalities are there because of the caste, class, race, religion, ethnicity, ability, whether you are, what is your ability. So what we need is a intersectional approach. And by 2015, when the review of Millennium Development Goal was taken from 2000 to 2015, what happened? So countries after countries say we have a long way to go. Certain goals we have, to certain extent we have walked ahead, but at the same time there have been many major challenges. So many Asian countries faced SARS, Africa faced Ebola virus. There were so many achievements of the past were wiped out by major pandemics and series of pandemics. And what we needed was a sustainable development goal. By then, climate change had also become a very important concern. So sustainable development goals were accepted, like 189, 2 countries went out, but 189 countries accepted sustainable development goal. The learnings of Millennium Development Goals were that you need to have both each and every goal, you need to bring a gender mainstreaming. And for that, you should have also a dedicated goal, which is goal number 3, which was there in Millennium Development Goal. And Millennium Development Goal had not taken cognizance of gender-based violence, which is all pervasive in all societies. So gender-based violence was also included, and the 15 days of activism against violence against women that was adopted by UNHRC in the year 1993, that became integral. And in the Sustainable Development Goal, where the 17 goals were decided, on all 17 goals, we need to do gender mainstreaming. And at the same time, dedicated goal was set SDG 5. It is for gender empowerment. Now, when this, it is in this political context that we talk about feminist foreign policy. That it is not only your national policy, because the world economy is integrated. Globalization has made so many things like interconnectivity, the third industrial revolution, which is the IT revolution. And now we are talking about fourth industrial revolution. Some countries have started talking about the fifth industrial revolution also, of artificial intelligence and robotics and massive automation and all. So integration, world has been integrated, the connectivity has increased, and what we need is that even in our foreign policy, we need to bring in feminist concerns. So this is the trajectory where the feminist foreign policy, which had elements of very important concern about the transformative approach, plus it also the question of peace, question of addressing the civil war situation, peace building, peacekeeping, peacemaking, they have to be there. UDHR had declared way back in 1948 that all men born are free and equal, as against that feminists had, Indian feminists, it was basically who raised question that all human beings should be, are born equal, not only men and women and children and transgender, now all of them. So the vision of feminist foreign policy, as it is acceptable in today's context, whether it is in G20 countries or in the G7 countries or in the United Nations, that first is that fight against sexual and sexist violence. And the 2 years of pandemic have also brought that issue to force. There was in one particular city in Mexico, in a one day, 80 women were murdered by their intimate partners. Okay, and same here also, we had more than 300,000 adolescent children who had approached through helpline. They had made distress calls. Okay, so the violence has been all pervasive, and we need to bring in even violence not only in the domestic arena or in a community or within the country, but violence when the war takes place. Currently on the planet, there are 200 geographical locations where you have a war or civil war or a territorial conflicts. Education of women and girls and men and boys, you know that after the pandemic, there has been massive massive exodus of girls from the educational institution. They are forced out. You can't even call them dropout, because when you say dropout, I decide whether I want to study or not. But when the circumstances throw you out, it is called forced out. So second very important concern is that education, how to bring back all these children who are forced out of education system due to economic crisis triggered by pandemic. That is a very important concern. Economic emancipation of women across the world, because we know that in the slowdown of the currently the world economy is going slow down. In the capitalist development, we have seen that in the phase of economic expansion, women are last to be hired. And when at the moment there is a crisis, women are first to be fired. So all those women who were working in a pre-pandemic period, only 40% of them are back in the economy. Okay, so that's very important. But countries like India or Pakistan, India has a second lowest work participation rate. Currently, official data says it is 23%, and the think tanks of economics, private think tanks, they are saying it is 19%, but both are very low. 23% of work participation is very low. In the year 2000, we had 40% work participation, which has been reduced after Nirbhaya. There was a gang rape of a girl, physiotherapist in a moving train. Within, it was in 2013. In 4 years' time, the work participation reduced from 34% to 27%. So you can see the sexual harassment at workplace and the street harassment, they are also becoming deterrent to women in the world of work. Involving women in political decision making, very important concern, because you have here on one hand, you have a European Parliament where you have a 40% of parliamentarians are women, while in so many of the South Asian countries, like wherever there is reservation, India is the only country where we don't have a reservation for women in parliament. We have it at a lower level, and the local self-government bodies, we have between 33 to 50% of reservation. It varies in different states. But when it comes to the upper echelons of power structure, legislature and parliament, we have very limited. Currently, it shows some 17% women are in the parliament. So increasing participation of women in politics and governance structures. So administration in the official, both in the private and public sector, whether it is a corporate governance or in a public sector enterprises, decision-making role, agenda setting power are very important. Involving women in a peace negotiations and treaties, because most of the time women are only given the job of only nurturance or just managing the refugee camps or managing the community kitchens and all. But hardcore issues about peace, women are not included. And it was found, it was in 2010 that the United Nations Security Council created a new body for women in peace. And it was found that wherever, in whichever country women were involved in peace negotiations, they could get long-lasting peace. Address the issues in diplomatic missions regarding marginalized, such as ethnic or religious minorities, sexual minorities, oppressed castes, oppressed nationalities. See to it that it is not only representation, but also voice. Their voice also should be amplified. So that is there. As a central concern of feminist foreign policy, gender equality ensures that women and girls enjoy the same level of human rights that the global community must strive for as an obligation within their international commitment and prerequisite to achieve broader foreign policy goals. So if your country is one country is having negotiation with the other country, you need to see to it that trafficking of women doesn't take place, where the forced labor is not allowed, bonded labor is not allowed. If there are domestic workers being hired by another country, then all the protective labor legislations are put in place. So all these human rights concerns and the women's rights concern have to be weaved into the foreign policy negotiation. So you may say that it is a trade relation, but in trade relation, all these issues must be debated. Another very important concern is that universal understanding needs to be interpreted in intersectional feminist perspective that is responsive to post-colonial socio-cultural reality. Very important, because the kind of power relation that the North and South has, I think we need to be very, very alert about the privileges enjoyed by white women and those who are from the post-colonial countries, how they are perceived only as victim. And there is a whole big brother will save you kind of an approach, paternalistic approach, or hierarchical international relations, or the local political dynamics which are ignored, and lived experiences of the citizens in a specific country. The sensitivity to the local culture is very important. And that's why not one voice, it is not my way or highway, but the diverse voices need to be taken into consideration. Now, in the first feminist foreign policy, where the women's rights are human rights was a slogan which was reiterated by Sweden and highlighted gender-based violence, trafficking, refugee crisis as a very important concern. Summit accepted the need for paradigm shift from being reactive to being proactive. So it, not only after the calamity takes place that you would intervene, but you have to see to it that how proactively you can work so that women's vulnerabilities are reduced, and if they are there, then they are addressed. Feminist perspective in international relations demands deconstruction of hegemonic power structures, systems that create policies that favor microscopic minority. Okay, so that also needs to be questioned. That what is in the interest of the large majority of population? Hence, it is imperative to challenge patriarchal systems of injustices, exploitation, exclusion, oppression, marginalization, and perpetuation of inequality. So feminist foreign policy not only focuses on international relations between the nation states, but also on political cultures, schools of thoughts that reflect their economic, political priorities, human rights of the socio-economically underserved communities. Now, we have seen that larger political reality currently, globalization at one level, state-to-state relations have increased, but like today we have met 700 of us from 10 countries are meeting on this platform. So people-to-people contact is also increasing. Along with the trade relations, what we see is that we also see so many cultural issues or the media issues of media or the space for conversation on differences that also enlarges. Multiple catastrophes that we've seen, like conventional war is back in the current Russian invasion of Ukraine. Okay, so that is also a new challenge that we are facing after Second World War. We thought that the conventional wars are now passing, which is not the case. Wars and conflicts at 200 locations on this planet, which has created unsurmountable problems faced by women. In fact, all those who talk about the morality and connect HIV/AIDS with morality, most of the studies showed that the country which is defeated has more incidences of HIV/AIDS because the winning country's soldiers, they do mass rape of women who are from the defeated country. So these are the larger political issues. So we need to locate some of the important issues, or the question of neoliberal economics, which slashes the social sector budget responsibility, that is creates hunger. Okay, so we need to see it, and now at least slowly and gradually, even World Bank and IMF are also now getting conscious about this kind, that we need to be very, very particular. You can't pressurize the poor countries to reduce social sector budget. Otherwise, there'll be tremendous mass hunger and mass starvation deaths. Urgency of robust discussion on contingencies of war. What does war create in terms of economic issues, in terms of health facilities, in terms of education, opportunities to education for mass of children, and also in terms of the diseases that wars create because of the kind of sexual violence that takes place. Now, women, peace and security, which was a core concept of feminist foreign policy. First time it was debated in the landmark convention, UN Security Council Resolution 1325, which was adopted in the year 2000, that same year when Millennium Development Goals were adopted. And a roadmap for interparliamentary unions, that we need to involve parliamentarians of all different countries to negotiate women, peace and security issues. And the multi-stakeholder policy, that peace delegations should be from the civilians, from the public intellectuals, from the elected representatives, person like Nelson Mandela. He created a peace, a whole peace delegation of taking people who were Nobel laureate or who had got Nobel Peace Prize or various at a ground level, they had done great work in terms of peace negotiations and building peace, peace building, peacekeeping, and peacemaking. So it was a very defining approach that UN adopted. Qualitative change from quantitative, that we just don't want to just that, oh, we educated 1 lakh children or we provided healthcare facilities to 75,000 something. That is from there we need to talk about what kind of public health policy are we adopting? What are we doing for funding the universalization of education? What are we doing for creating massive job to address youth unemployment? So thinking at that level is very important. Challenging the binaries that marginalize women in diplomacy, that okay, all the diplomatic talks, no, they would be hardcore subjects will be discussed by men, male politicians and male diplomats. Women, we can take care of the soft issue. That whole dichotomy of nature versus nurture, or logical versus men are logical and women are emotional, or men are violent and women are victim. That kind of discourse, I think that needs to shift. And we have seen that how women soldiers of UK, they perpetrated extremely gory, extremely horrifying violence on prisoners in Syria. Okay, so it is not that biologically, once you are a woman, you become an angel or you become a nurturer. No, it is your position, what kind of vested interest you are representing, that determines how you are going to behave. So this kind of a mature approach of when you talk about the foreign policy has to be there. Women have been mostly, when it comes to the foreign policy dialogues, they've always been in participants, not decision maker. Now in G20 or recent debates, at least after the pandemic, where 18 national leaders who in 18 countries where women were the helm of the affair, they were the ones who could address coronavirus very, very effectively. They put people before profit. And those countries, those small countries, or in India, we had a health minister of Kerala. The way she contained corona and reduced human misery massively by coming up with a very, very people-centered policy with empathy and state resources. I think that after that, we see that women, there is a more and more debate on how to address the misogyny in political arena, because we have seen what happened in Sweden has gone back in their feminist foreign policy. New Zealand, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she resigned. Another Prime Minister resigned. So there is a old boys club which viciously attacked these women. I think that is why we need to create a strong public opinion so that they don't get isolated. No. So women have to navigate challenging stereotypes in both domestic arena as well as in global space. Intersectional perspective in which geographical and cultural differences we need to be sensitive to. Global voice, globally we need to demand for equity. Currently in our country, the Olympic champions, women, they nearly 8 of them have complained of extremely brutal sexual violence against them by the authorities. This is not only in India. It happened in Haiti, it happened in Afghanistan, it happened in USA. In so many other women's groups have been, women's rights organizations have been inundated by this kind of complaints. But it is the unity of the stars. And now today, there's a reports that massive support they are getting from the states they are coming up. So even common people are supporting them. So the question of equity, because 2 things which we have learned from Me Too movement is that howsoever popular, howsoever hardworking, howsoever superstar you are, 2 things always go against women. One is the wage parity. Patriarchs will see to it that women don't get, whether you are in Hollywood star and a whole film success lies on your shoulder, then too you will get less than this thing. And second one is sexual harassment at workplace. Wherever you are, we saw photograph of that head of European Union woman when she went to Gulf country. They kept only 2 chairs for male diplomats, and she had to stand. No, that is a way, the subtle way in which she was insulted, but there are many other also ways in which the old boys club seeks to eat that these women, they don't ask for their rights. When it comes to charity or throwing crumbs, okay, because that is a paternalism part of the patriarchy. But when women ask for the equal rights, then you see massive backlash. So that currently we see that in the world, massive backlash is coming back to women who are efficiency plus, who are extremely articulate, who take decisions about the country's welfare in a very, very judicious and scientific and rational way, who have a popular mandate also, because they came to power with the massive support of the masses. But the whole dynamics of governance, which are full of misogyny and toxic patriarchy, that makes their life miserable. So that is why the transnational solidarity is very important. Work with women, not work for women. Okay, that is what these diplomats are saying. Power for women, not power over women. Okay, so this is the way the new feminist slogans have come up. And the core concept in feminist foreign policy is that bottoms-up approach. You need to represent needs and demands, dreams and agenda of the large majority of population, because once you are at that level, you are not only talking about women, you are talking about whole population. Political participation, in the arena of political participation, what we see that now women have become constituencies. So women as voters have been accepted. But women, how many women are given tickets? So in countries like India, even those who work as a foot soldier for 30, 40 years, they are not given tickets by their own party. Leave aside not having 33% or 1/3 reservation. Formal recognition of women in decision-making through national legislation is also extremely important. That is what is the demand, that you need to pass the law for quota for women till we attain a stage where there will be equality for all. Several countries have not even ratified optional protocol to CEDAW, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that if you don't get justice, if there is a in your own country, you can directly approach the UN. Okay, so several countries have accepted it, but there are most of the developing countries, most colonial countries have not even accepted. So if you raise women's question, and you don't get justice, you don't have any recourse to directly approach the UN. So this is also another important demand of the feminists. Now, what we have seen that whole history of the first two world wars, where in 1910 in Germany, Clara Zetkin declared that what we want is a bread. We don't want bullet. We want milk for our children. We don't want tank. So you can see there was all over Europe, women were asking that they were asking for peace, not war. We have a glorious history that even in the earlier phase, we saw that women had done very important work. Now, if we see the feminist solidarities that we saw in currently, like in Afghanistan, women are asking for the education and freedom to move, opportunity to play. In China, women are asking for representation and voice in the political sphere. In spite of controlled media, things are coming out. In India, Muslim girls are fighting against being thrown out of school and colleges for wearing hijab. In Mexico, women are fighting against femicide. In Chile, women are marching against gender-based violence. And the song of Chilean women has been now, I think, must be in more than 100 languages in the world. And what we have seen, the US women are fighting against withdrawal of women's right to safe abortion on demand by women. So global solidarity for Ukrainian women is against the sexual violence perpetrated by Russian soldiers. That is also, but it has not got much, global voice. There are women's organizations, some human rights organizations are talking about it, but it has not become a kind of a important global demand, no? Because of the geopolitical reasons, no? Where there are so many countries, the world is now, again, the polarized, and the economic interests become very important. Yeah. So why my PPT is gone? Hello.
We are able to see your presentation, ma'am.
Acha, you are able to see my presentation. Okay, no problem. Because my battery, I forgot to, yeah, okay. So now when it comes to women in peacemaking, we have, excuse me, is it going
Yes.
ahead?
We are on the slide, women in peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building.
Acha, you are there, no? Very much. Okay. Yeah, you are able to see, no? Yeah. So
Yes.
we have seen that at the time of war, so many countries, they send peacekeeping force. Earlier, it used to be only male soldiers who were going for the UN peacekeeping. But we saw even at the time of Taliban rule in Afghanistan in the previous phase, so many women had gone to Afghanistan mainly to run the school and to do hand-holding of Afghan women. And they were also running the health centers. And this thing, we saw that in India sent women's battalion in Liberia, and women soldiers played extremely important role in terms of counseling, in terms of hand-holding of women who were ravished due to sexual violence, or girls who were extremely scared to go back to school because of the kind of civil war situation that was existing, and they have been applauded in a great way. And even we have seen that in UN Women's Security Council, women feminists, nearly 40 to 45 feminists from different parts of the world, they are constantly bringing up this issue of peace and security in the UN body. What we have seen that in the Sustainable Development Goal, when we are talking about the SDG Goal 5, where 17 goals are there, in which whether it is a hunger or poverty or health issues or urban development or urbanization, everywhere we are talking about integration of gender concerns, and same in the feminist foreign policy. So the political objectives of the general conditions of each and every country. And then you also have a social groups, which whether they are NGOs or civil society organizations or political parties, governance structures, and what kind of strategies do you have? If you talk about feminist foreign policy, you need to identify the strategic practical gender needs. What are the practical gender needs of that particular country in terms of education, health, employment, skill building, leadership development? And what are the strategic gender needs, which would have a massive transformatory appeal? For example, we have seen in, say, Somalia or in Rwanda, where ethnic cleansing wiped out male population. Okay? Or we saw several countries where HIV/AIDS took away male population, and there were only children and elderly people because all the adult males were killed. And the new leadership that has come because of the gender sensitization, like you can see that in these countries, the leaders are only women, and they have completely changed the scenario. All the liquor shops, they converted them into milk shops. They did not make these people unemployed, but they just said that our children will not grow on alcohol, our children will go on milk. So or gender responsive budgeting. They have so judiciously implemented gender responsive budgeting because, and how do you do this gender responsive budgeting? There are 5 crucial areas in which you need to reduce gender gap. Area of education, health, employment, reduction in gender-based violence, and decision-making. So they use the macroeconomic policies, the fiscal policies, in such a way that budget for all these issues were given top priority. Now, when it comes to the interrelationship of the gendered, most all the institutions are gendered, whether they are educational institution, political institution, or economic institutions. So how do we start the intervention policy? So gender sensitization at every level is very important. And also the women leaders who are into the international affairs, they also need to keep the connect. They have to be in touch with what's happening at a local level. And the gender equality, where the 3 important dimensions of gender equality, leading to women empowerment. When we talk about empowerment, it is a conscientization. How do you do? It is not only development where you just give opportunity to study, or you give entitlement to economic resources, or you give health, you fulfill the health needs. You also see to it that their self-esteem, their confidence, their status in the society also improves. So conscientization is very important. Second one is that climate change and the environmental challenges that we are facing now. So how are we going to make the sustainable development priorities in our country? And it is everywhere it is required, whether it's you are in rural areas, or you are in tribal areas, or forest areas, or urban areas. So constantly integrating climate concerns in the development discourse, and also that what are the gender specific impact if the droughts increase. Who are the ones who are going to be starving the most? It's the women eat last, least, and leftover in most of the Asian countries. So they are the ones who will suffer. Children will have be malnourished. So we need to provide the data, because without data, you are shooting in the darkness. You need data for addressing your policy, investing your functionaries, investing your funds and resources, and that's why data becomes very important. Now, there have been institutions which train women. There is a global Center for Women in Leadership, or Center for Feminist Foreign Policy. And its motto is that a feminist approach to feminist policy provides a powerful lens through which we can interrogate violent global system of power that leaves millions of people in a perpetual state of vulnerability. So feminist foreign policy involves government making both domestic and global gender equality issues as a central of its goal. And it is a multidimensional policy which aims to improve experiences and quality of life of women and marginalized groups. So you have a judicial route, you have a legislative route, you have a mass mobilization of women, you have to amplify the voices of the voiceless, and feminist foreign policy. That means you try to tilt the balance, which is that currently there is an imbalance in the power. So you need to see to it that your power balance brings equality. And for that, what you need is equity. Equity is creating an ecosystem which would make the goal of equality reachable and smooth. So gender representation for women, so that means representation is a very important issue. Representation not as a decorative piece, because even in Hollywood and Bollywood, women are represented, but do they have agency? Do they have a voice, or they are just treated just as a piece of meat or piece of cake? No. So it is very important. Representation and voice, both are extremely important in the transnational security agenda. And what we have seen that United Nations, like 3025, which is the Women, Peace and Security, there has to be more public education about this resolution of the UN. And that should be the conscience keeper for the world community. So all those countries which have adopted 2035, and there should be official acknowledgement of conflict-related sexual violence that refers to rape, sexual slavery, forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, forced abortion, and forced sterilization, forced marriage, trafficking of person. So war is not something which is just a spectacle where you throw bomb and people or things burn and you see it on the television. Okay, that is not. There is a massive human misery. Every war takes back whatever we have achieved through our social reform movement. 150, 200 years of efforts of women's liberation, they get wiped out after every war. It increases the vulnerability, helplessness of women and children. So what we talk about when it comes to women, peace and security, first, participation, which calls for women to participate equally with men in peace, political and security and decision-making process at a local, national, regional and international level. Number two, protection that seeks to ensure women and girls' rights are protected and promoted in conflict-affected situations, and also addressing the sexual and gender-based violence. Third aspect is of prevention. Prevention refers to prevention of all forms of violence against women and girls in conflict-affected situations which includes fighting impunity, that you just can't say that army people cannot be brought to book if there are allegations of violence against them, or women involving women in conflict prevention. Security Council, UN Security Council adopted 10 resolutions within, say, from the year 2000 to the 2019. In those 19 years, what we saw that it highlighted the linkage between women's roles and experiences in conflict and peace and security. And it made it obligatory on the part of nation states to extend that all from international to local level, there should be intergovernmental organizations such as United Nations to national government, and also women, peace and security mandates. The blueprint of WPS should be implemented by all countries. So that kind of a public opinion we need to build, the world opinion, global opinion we need to build. Relief and recovery focuses on meeting women and girls' specific humanitarian needs. So every time the people become refugees, whether they are environmental refugees due to climate change or the political situation which makes them refugee. Currently in Manipur, we are seeing thousands of children or human beings have become refugees. So what are the needs, specific needs of women? And reinforcing women's capacity to act as leaders in the relief and recovery. They are just not victims. They themselves, given the opportunity, they can play leadership role. Now, what we see is that the record of the peace argument, the globally, whichever peace agreements which have taken place between 2010 and 2019, we have seen that wherever the women were involved in the peace agreement, they achieved long-lasting peace. That is a very important, because commitment to peace was much stronger when it came to. Now, human security, when we talk about, there are 5 dimensions. One is the economic security, that people should now have their economy. If it is ruined, we need to help them rebuild the economy. Health security, if there is because of the war, because of the malnutrition, because of the hunger, there are whatever different types of health emergencies they are facing. There also we need to provide the support. We saw how Cuba sent that chartered plane with doctors to the African countries because they had no system to address corona. Okay? Or even at the time of Ebola, when Africa suffered from Ebola, the humanitarian aid that was provided. Environmental security, if there is a typhoon or sandstorm or flood or drought, whatever at that time also, what kind of support, whether evacuating them from that location, or if there is a radiation, okay, because of nuclear testing. There are so many horrible reports we are getting from the Fiji Island, that what happened because of the continuous testing of nuclear bombs in our Pacific. So many Fiji Islands, there are islands after islands where people are suffering. So what kind of environmental security are we providing? Currently, I think on YouTube, you are seeing that those films from the Fiji environmental groups. Physical security of the people, community security, where there is ethnic tension, certain communities are at the receiving end. How do we protect their interests? And the political security, if there are a political conflict, and those who are at the receiving end, those who are facing violence and annihilation, how to provide them refuge and refugee status. Now, when it comes to the gender concerns, so the areas of women's empowerment, one is resource allocation, very important. That's why you saw that even after the pandemic, women leaders of 64 countries came together. They had a meeting in Paris and Mexico, both Miss France and Mexico. Rio de Janeiro, there was a parallel meeting, and Paris also, they had a meeting. How would this 203 countries who were suffering from pandemic, and so many countries did not have pharma industries, they did not have a very strong, and the pharma companies, multinational pharma companies were asking for a high royalty. I know we had a delegate from ADB from Philippines to Mumbai. There were only 50 vaccines they had. The whole country had 50 vaccines. So only some important ministers and all they managed to get. And for that was also very expensive. So what kind of resource allocation, health resources or educational resources, food resources, okay, they're very important. UN systems working method, whichever body, whether it is a children's concern, UNICEF, or cultural damage has taken place, then UNESCO, they have to come forward. the whole working method of the prevention and also backing up the people, strengthening partnership and coherence, partnership between industry, governance structure, partnership between private and public, this thing, partnership between community-based organizations, NGOs, NGOs, consultation with women in civil society. So the women's rights organizations, like when it came to pandemic, more than 400 women's organizations, they work with the UN system, okay, to provide up-to-date data based to the UN, and what kind of, every week we were getting advisory from WHO. We were also getting advisory from the UN. Inclusion of gender perspective at every level, conflict prevention and resolution. So what we see is that international security, human rights, international political economy, and their implications on gender policies, they become very important, because how gender interacts with the issues related to all these three, they are deeply associated with the human rights concerns. And that's why, regardless of whether or not one views gender as a mainstream or as a marginal, both within the academic study of international relations and in the practice of international relations, it is apparent that gender issues have gained significantly visibly in contemporary politics and requires informed research and analysis. So for academicians like us, and today is the program for the faculty development, all of us, wherever is your location, whether you are in college or university or community-based organization or senior citizens organization or in the government structure, you need to keep this perspective in mind. So to counter any gender stereotype, and I think Madam told us very well, Madam Naina Chaudhary ji, she said that how the gender stereotypes are coming in the way of progress of nation states, progress of the country, and it is gender equality is not a zero-sum game. Okay, it is a win-win formula. It is a win-win formula for the woman, for the family, for the community, for the nation, and for the whole world. So I think taking this message and developing leadership of women and sexual minorities in development program demands mainstreaming of gender sensitization program. And that's why today's program, like this workshop, is extremely important. Feminist foreign policy need to include in their action agenda understanding the impact of business activities on natural resources. Whether you are overexploiting the natural resources, are you creating any kind of a disaster for the future generation, water and energy use, supporting new business models that can deliver clean and renewable energy, establishing sustainable procurement policies. You don't exploit one particular country because they are poor or they are post-colonial. So your procurement policies also should not be like the way colonial masters, they completely, it was a one-sided exploitation. Supplier code of conduct of the suppliers, promoting responsible consumption through marketing and public relation events, sponsoring NGO initiatives to restore degraded habitat, and transformative policies for gender equality, promote gender responsive budgeting, and also transformative financial policies. The idea of gender sensitive foreign policy as a multi-dimensional policy framework that aims to include women's experiences has also been gaining traction. And gender equality today for sustainable future tomorrow was the slogan of the United Nations. And that is why, but that can be materialized only when there is a transnational solidarity. And for that, this kind of programs become very important. Here are some of the important works. They are, most of them are in the public domain. They can be easily accessed. Swarna Rajgopal is one of the senior person who has worked on the peace for more than 40 years. She's a political scientist. Maria Jason's work on politics of gender in the UN Security Resolution gives the whole trajectory of the debates and discussions in the United Nations. And Trick or Trade, UN implementation of Security Council Resolution 1325, which is so important for currently so many small countries and islands which are facing conflict, territorial conflict, and also internal conflict. And we have also seen feminism for 99%. That's an extremely important manifesto, that it is not only for the 1% of elite women. We are talking of feminism. Feminism is just not a fashionable slogan. Feminism is for 99%. That means it covers men, women, sexual minorities, and people of all genders in all social locations. Countering anti-gender movement and towards the populist feminism, which is now very much into consumerism, that on 8th March you get subsidized rate at a beauty parlor. That is the kind of thing which is it is completely sipped in consumerism. And a memo to the next administration, International Center for ICRW has done extensive research. In fact, on ICRW website, you can get so many good short films and also documents on feminist foreign policy. Biden Harris administration's first 100 days towards the feminist foreign policy, that also very minutely examines what kind of foreign policy which has been adopted by the US, a framework for foreign policy that has been debated in detail by RCRW's document, and also defining feminist foreign policy by ICRW. All these documents can be very, very easily downloaded, and they are not password protected. They are there in the public domain. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful presentation. And in fact, a lot of participants here have also appreciated the session. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, 1 minute. I need to, I need to stop share. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, ma'am. And there are a few participants who are requesting us to share the presentation. Can we do that after the
Yes,
session?
definitely. So who do I send it to, or should I, is it possible to share it here?
Yes, ma'am. I think you will be able to share it through the chat.
Yeah, it's
chat.
there. I'm sharing it right. I'm sharing it.
Thank you, ma'am. And we have some questions also from our participants.
Yeah.
The first question is from Ms. Madhurima Das Gupta. Ma'am asked about the approaches of gender mainstreaming, which approach is applicable to understand the present status of Indian women.
Yeah, I think there are three approaches. One is that top down, okay? Safety of women at workplace, which is a prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, it's a top down. Because who is responsible? The top boss is responsible and accountable if unsafe, any harassment takes place. Second one is a lateral. Wherever you are working, you start demanding equality and equity. Okay, there was a time when I joined the academia, women would join as a junior most position, they would retire at a junior most position. The things changed. The moment we had an Equal Remuneration Act, which ensured equality of opportunity, equality of treatment, and equality of wages, women started asking, because there is this law, and they started using the law, and they said that, okay, I am equally competent, I am also putting in same kind of labor. Why can't there be discrimination? Earlier, women, you would never hear of a woman being a HOD or registrar or vice chancellor or non-teaching staff. She would never be the superintendent. She would retire as a clerk. That is not. So the demanding, the people, they demand that we need equality because our constitution has guaranteed equality. My mother's generation did not do that. My grandmother's generation did not do that. They were happy. My mother would say, oh, my father allowed me to study. I won't say that. I said, no, Indian constitution says that every child has a right to study. So I have an entitlement. So that is another way of, and which the person like Malala, or we have all these young girls who are in our organization, adolescent girls, they say, these are my entitlements, no? So that is second. Third one is a bottom up, where you know that individually, if you ask for your rights, you will be witch hunted. You will face backlash. So what you do, you form an organization, you come together and you raise your voice collectively. The way these sports stars have done. It is not that in the past they have not complained of sexual harassment. In fact, the budget also, the unit cost for women, sports women in the budget is 12 rupees. What do you get out of 12 rupees? Unit cost for sportsmen is 200 rupees. They would get nice meal. They would get thick dal, they would get non-veg, they would get eggs, everything, and they would be able to perform well. You have seen this movie, Shah Rukh Khan movie, Chak De India, okay? So there also you saw the discrimination at every level that they are facing. So they get united. That's what the women's movement over the last 40 years has done. Collective effort of fighting against any form of discrimination, dehumanization, terrorization, subjugation, and injustice. So these are the three ways in which we can ensure equity within the institution, within the community, within the family, as like Amartya Kumar Sen and Martha Nussbaum, that it's a bargaining. You have to negotiate it at a personal level. If you don't get it through negotiation, okay, there's so many young girls are saying that they were forced to marry when they get their menstruation. Okay, family, they can't fight, but they know that there is a law against child marriage. Now, what these girls are doing, 7th standard, 8th standard, 9th standard girls, they are approaching helpline that my parents are forcibly marrying me off. During the pandemic, 1 year, we got 3,75,000 in 375,000 distress calls were made by children because they were forced into either marriage or a forced labor. So this kind of increasing their democratic space, amplifying their voice and supporting them through state and non-state actors. State actors can be the government and the police interventions, creation of a shelter home, and the non-state actors like NGOs and the community-based organization who stand by these people. So we have to have a multi-pronged approach to ensure this kind of gender equity. So creating equity to enable equality. How do I?
Thank you, ma'am. I hope, Ms. Madhurima, that has answered your question. There's another question, ma'am, from Ms. Shraddha Pandit. She's asking, where does India stand when it comes to public sanitation for women, including public toilets?
Very bad scenario. And currently, first time we are seeing a massive movement by women's organizations about this thing. Like there is a Right to Pee campaign where 40 NGOs in Mumbai city have come together asking for public toilets for women. And this is the city where you have a highest number of work participation of women, you can say informal sector. And women leave their home at, say, they are away from their home nearly for 12 hours a day. And still we have only 112 public toilets for women, and they are also not cleaned properly, and they are also, some of them don't even have door and all. So the agitation was started by 40 NGOs, and now they have also done the gender, I was involved in the gender audit of budget, sanitation budget, which is extremely high so far as the Bombay Municipal Corporation is concerned. And it is the wealthiest municipal corporation in Asia. Okay, so question is not of resources. Okay, it's a question of political will. So first you meet the bureaucrat, oh, but women are homemakers. No, why do you need public toilets for them? But I said there are 2,300 toilets for men. No, but there are rickshaw drivers, there are taxi drivers, there are workers. No, they need it. So mainly this middle class bureaucrats who have their own stereotypes about women as homemakers and housewives. We need to work against that. We need to, and we provided the data and then this thing. Another demand that has come about sanitation is from the transgender community, because they say that they will not use gents' toilet. They have a very, very painful experience of being raped by men. And they would not use women's toilet because women will get scared because of the societal, the kind of prejudice that exists in the society about transgender community. And 2 states came up with the 2 states agreed to have a separate toilet for them. So that is there. Another major challenge in the sanitation is the question of solid and liquid waste, solid waste and organic waste. When it comes to solid waste, it is a $1 million business. It's an extremely lucrative business. Women are at the bottom of that pyramid because they are the ones who collect this waste in an extremely hazardous condition. And they are treated as a thief, and they are treated as a burden on the urban, most of them are migrant, because who would do this work? So now they have been unionized. Now in many cities, women's organizations have they have formed association of these women so that they get after segregation of waste, because in most of the poor countries, and especially in India, waste is used at every level. There are various stages of segregation that takes place, and women are there, and it is unpaid labor. In fact, they are doing service to the urban economy, people like us who create so much of a waste. But main thing is that doing studies. So Stri Mukti Sangatna in Mumbai, which started Parisar Vikas, there's an environment development project. So they have done it. Similarly, in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Kolkata, in many, in Delhi also. Now there are organizations working with the waste managers, and they see to it that they are not brutalized and they get better deal in terms of, and plus they have also started developmental initiative with the for their children, so that they go to school, and there are they even many of them have now they are in college also. Second aspect is that of making the sanitation sector technologically advanced. Why all other sectors are getting technological development and not sanitation? Here comes the role of caste system. And that's why so many organizations, and especially the Dalit organizations, they have demanded that so far as all the drudgery prone, dangerous, harmful activity should be mechanized, have robo. And two states have robo. They have introduced on all underground cleaning in Kerala and Delhi. It is done by the robo, and in other places also the waste segregation and all, where technological advancement should take place. So it's a twin approach of getting better D for those sanitation workers, and second one is the technological advancement.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another question by Ms. Akhila.
I have shared my PPT. Can you see it?
Is it visible?
Yeah, 8/5/23, Feminist Foreign Policy, PV.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Another question from Ms. Akhila is, if gender construction is one of the vital reasons for suppression of women, then is it possible to bring certain changes in gender construction which has been constructed and still being followed from time immemorial?
Correct. It has been followed for 5,000 years, definitely. And and the protest against that is a history of only 200 years. Okay. You can say in India, yeah, you can say it has a right from 600 BC that women have been right from Terigata. Women have raised voice against patriarchal control. But gender is, as you rightly said, it is socially constructed, and who constitutes society, you and me, all of us. So it is possible to change it, and that is the effort. It happens at an individual level also, because the kind of status your grandmother or great grandmother enjoyed, I think as compared to them, I'm sure you have far more freedom and agency. And collectively, through raising our voice, not accepting any kind of undignified this thing in your life. Because my mother was saying as a child, I always raised question. And she said, good, you are born in 20th century, otherwise you would have been killed as a witch. And we realized very soon that individually, if we do such things, raise our voice, people would either call you mad or they would do be chanting. But when you collectively do, the collective catharsis, is very, very important. And that's why now at the age of 68 also, I haven't lost my sanity. Why? It was the women's movement. It's the collective wisdom of the women's movement, solidarity that I face that, okay, today I'm sticking out my neck, but there are hundreds of women who will stand by me at the time of difficulty, or if there is an onslaught on me. So this kind of, that's why unity and creating a democratic space, consciousness raising become very important, converting more and more people to think like us, that there is equality, there can't be peace without justice, there can't be equality without equity, because constitutional equality is a formal equality. If you want substantive equality, we need to create ambience which is more conducive, enabling for all genders. I won't say only women, I would say even the transgender and those who are persecuted in the current context.
Another question from Mr. Umar Iqbal says, why women have always been considered for participatory role rather than making them real stakeholders, such as in the role of, say, decision making or the other things? Why are they not involved in it?
Now, as compared to earlier times, they are more involved, because you can say that before 1994, in the local self-government bodies, there was only the power of misogyny, muscle, and mafia. As against that, you can see at a panchayat, because I have been doing training of elected representatives since 94, because that was the time people used to even laugh at them, that they were good for nothing except waking up nicely and offering flowers to the leaders and do flag hoisting on 15th August and 26th January. They had no other utility. Now you can't say that, because if you see the women elected representatives have tested and they have experienced 6 rounds of elections, and many of them have emerged as a very good leader. In fact, even during the pandemic, I don't think there are many studies on what role did women elected representatives play during the pandemic. They were not organizing Zoom meeting. They were actually going to their constituency. They were accountable to their wards. They were organizing vaccination camp. They were managing community kitchens. They were organizing food packets for lonely senior citizens and people with disability. They were interacting with this thing. So things have changed as compared to earlier. Whenever I go for a panchayat training, local self-government bodies training, at a ground level, lot of important things that are happening. And that's why I think you can see, even when it comes to education, first time, like you can see that if you see the latest Aisha report, it shows that except for BTech, MTech and law, all other disciplines, women have surpassed men. 55% of the total number, 60% of total number, 49% of total number, 54%. That is there. So it's not only BA, BCom. In all other disciplines also, women have. So now parents have also changed. They are investing in their daughters' education. First time Aisha report is showing that parents are ready to pay high fees for their daughters' education, middle class parents. Okay. So things are changing, but that change, if you want to make this change into a very transformative reality, like transform it in a very effective way, then I think all of us will have to combine our efforts.
Ma'am, there are several
Someone
questions.
has said that she did not receive my PPT. So if you can write your email ID, I can send. It is very much there in the chat box.
I'll share
you
the
can see
email
PPT,
ID, ma'am, so that you can share.
just go above where you have written no PPT not visible 349. You just go to, yeah, it is here 3:44 p.m. PV. It's in red. Can you see it? It's here. 3:44 p.m. I had uploaded it. Even if you don't see it there, then write your email ID. I will send it directly. But it's very much there.
Several questions, ma'am, but one last question from Ms. Archana. She has the question that how to differentiate between the recognition and gender-based violence.
Yeah, recognition.
And gender-based violence.
Recognition of what?
Recognition of the gender, I think she means, and she has given an example also, like you have given about the third gender who recently got the recognition by the government, but at the same time they are facing a large number of backlash by the majority.
Correct. So I think that you have, and that is the history of all legal reforms, no? Because laws come first. The constitution is so progressive. All the best elements of world's constitution are there in the Indian constitution. But still we saw that at operational level, the gap between what constitution promises and what the reality, the gap is extremely wide. And it's that Baba Sahib also said when he submitted the constitution in the parliament. Same thing is happening currently. And if you see the latest report, last week only it was released by People's Union for Civil Liberty, Nazariya, 6-7 organizations have come together, that the violence by the Nettle family, their own family members, no, that is a most devastating so far as the transgender community is concerned. Abandoning their own transgender child, or the moment they're seeing them as an embarrassment, not introducing them to the relatives, not investing in their education, and creating the situation through taunting and humiliation to such an extent that they run away and go back to their communities. So I think the prejudices which have existed, and this is right from the colonial times, we did not have it. We haven't inherited it from Indian culture, because when Arjun had to act as a transgender, he was not humiliated, okay? Or when we talk about Shikhandi, Bhim's child, Shikhandi, we don't laugh at Shikhandi. Shikhandi was an important historical character. Or we had a transgender community which was part of the soldiers. They were the soldiers. They used to be in the army also before British came. It was only after the British came back, started ruling India, and they came up with Section 377, a draconian law which stigmatized, brutalized, and dehumanized transgender community, that the new mindset against transgender community came into existence. Because all over the world there are transgenders, but why they don't get this kind of humiliation the way it is happening in our society? It is only where the British rulers were there that you see this kind of stigmatization. And I think that is why we need to change the public opinion. And currently what we see is that integration of like organization like Tata Institute of Social Sciences. You have so many children who have come out, but is the luxury of coming out there for the transgender child who is on the road, who is abandoned by the child? And they say, what are you talking about coming out? We are already out, and the whole world knows who we are. Even our parents have abandoned us. We have to survive through begging, and we have to survive. We are forced into sex trade. We have been raped. Anybody can rape us. They think that we are always, we are meant only for that. Even when we go to police station to write for FIR, they don't even consider it. They say, this is your work. No, why the rape of a transgender person is not rape? So this is the kind of insensitivity that has come, and I think we need to counter it, because now we have a law which is also extremely inadequate. Transgender community is not at all happy with the 2019 law, which only gives the punishment of 2 years for rape of a transgender person, while ordinarily any case of rape, proved case of rape, the punishment is 7.5 years. What message are you giving by such discriminatory law? Or who decides which, whether who you declare as, whether you are a man or a woman or a intersex? It is the magistrate or a doctor who will decide, not the person concerned. So I think there are inadequacies in the law, but I think societal attitude, main thing is the societal attitude, the parental, convincing the parents. Like we have so many friends who are openly transgender, and their parents have not abandoned them, and they are flourishing. They are excellent lawyers, they are IAS officers, they are doctors. We have a friend, I think Dr. Veena Vaswani will tell you, she works closely with the transgender community in Bangalore. And she'll tell you that if the conditions change, things are. Kerala has completed a census of transgender communities to address their developmental needs. They have increased the budget from 10% to 20% of the overall budget of the state for social sector to deal with the needs of housing, education, health, and skill development and employment. Tamil Nadu, for past 5-6 years, they are doing gender responsive budgeting with the specific concern of transgender. So things, I think we need to, and UN Women had also come up with a module how to implement gender responsive budgeting with the specific needs of the strategic and practical needs of transgender community. So I think these efforts have to be intensified now. Even in the WDC, so many universities have changed the name. It is not only WDC, Women Development Cell, it is Women and Gender Development Cell. So it is not only aggrieved women can go to that cell. Even aggrieved transgender student can also approach the cell for justice.
Right, ma'am. I think we have come to the end of the question answer session now. And on behalf of the Amity team, I would like to thank you for taking out your time and giving us such valuable suggestions on the history of feminism and accelerating the women empowerment here. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Jasmeet Kaur, I am sending you PPT.
Moving forward, I request the participants that we'll be sending you the presentation, or during the during the session, you can also take screenshots, and we'll ask the resource person to get the PPTs to us, and then we can share it to you.
And then if you give, because I don't have a this thing, I don't have email IDs of your. I have
Yes,
WhatsApp number, but not email.
I'll send you our email ID, ma'am, so that you can send the presentation to us, and later we can share it to the participants.
Yes, I'll do.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Professor Veena Vaswani, Director, Center of Ethics, Yenepoya, deemed to be University, Mangalore. I'd like to introduce ma'am. Dr. Vaswani is a qualified bioethicist with a background of forensic medicine and toxicology. She completed her master's in bioethics as an Erasmus Mundus scholar from 3 European universities, Belgium, Netherlands, and Italy. She also has postgraduate diplomas in medical law and ethics and human rights law, both from the National Law School of India, and she has completed her PhD from the Dublin City University, Dublin. Ma'am has also received several recognitions and awards like Ethics Advisory Board Member for Indigo, effective and affordable flu vaccine for the world, Advisory Board Member for Drishti to develop the digital health research ethics, and appointed as a member of Board of Directors of International Academy of Bioethics. Ma'am has also published several research papers in various international journals. Ma'am, we welcome you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dr. Veena Vaswani. I'd like to thank the organizers, Dr. Anita, and also Vibhuti Madam for having me be here and share my ideas with you on accelerating equity and empowerment through healthcare. This is a subject close to my heart, and it's not that I have much proficiency in this, but I gathered through a period of time with Vibhuti Madam. Because when we invited her over to Center for Ethics to be the adjunct faculty, then it was like opening another small window through which we could access a huge part of the universe. Initially, we were doing bioethics, research ethics, clinical ethics, health technology assessment, but we were not there as far as gender was concerned. But it was only when Vibhuti Madam came in interaction with us, and then we thought there is a wealth of information and things for us to do. So with that note, I would like to start my presentation. And one thing we like to place on record is it's still a work in progress, because this is never a complete presentation. It continues to be, because we still feel there is something more we can do about it. So when we are talking about gender concerns in general, gender inequality in healthcare, and women and non-communicable diseases when it comes to health, and women gender equality and health as well. Now, when even including women who work in healthcare, how is their health being neglected? Female values in healthcare, gender justice, and key strategies in accelerating equity and empowerment through healthcare. So when talking about the gender concerns, medical science and patient care have historically focused on male patients. If you look at even the textbooks, there's a huge volumes only about diseases that are more common, occupation related, whereas you find just a minuscule mention of diseases particularly to women. Added to the fact that anything that is reproductive in nature is women's care. And the moment you talk of women's health, first thing on the agenda is reproductive rights and reproductive care. But then there's also a body that slogs from morning till night, from literally age of 5 or 6 till womb to tomb, you could say. But then the health overall in general and vitality and what it is done to prevent the diseases is not much in the center of the discussion. So this is a very good topic that you have chosen, handpicked, and I'm sure it's going to make overall a lot of impact on people to focus that if there is requirement to change, then we have to look at the broad canvas. Don't be afraid to look at a broader canvas, because those of us like me who come from scientific background generally like a very specific solution. One problem, one solution. We do not want to talk in abstract. We do not want to talk about a big picture. We like what is a research question and 2 objectives. That's a mindset most of the doctors carry. And as a result, when they deal with ladies, when they deal with women in the waiting room in the OPDs, they ignore the fact that we need to look at a bigger picture of nutrition, including all of the well-being, rest, and how it's going to help in gaining health. So women live longer and have more unhealthy years many a times than aging men. Because for men, as long as he lives, there's somebody to serve. But there are more than 2 million women living alone, even to the end of their life. There's nobody to serve, but they have to fend for their own selves. So socio-cultural aspects vary significantly between the genders and have a different impact on health, well-being, and also diseases. Equal rights for women all over the world much talked about, but not much achieved. In fact, I really like what Vibhuti Madam said, that with every war, we are taking steps backward. It is pushing us back, then making us go forward. Ultimately, who benefits from the war? None. But who loses? It's feminization of poverty. More women and more poorer they become. So the direct impact is on every woman. So gender concerns in sustainable developmental goals. So India stands 114th amongst 142 countries. So much noise we create about elections and trying to be forefront of everything. But when it really translates, does it reduce the hunger gap? Has it really improved the living condition? Has it improved the health access? No. And nobody is asking these questions instead of shrouding them under a glamour of everything is fine. So all goals are expected to mainstream to Special Development Goal 5, which aim to have a gender equality and empower women and girls. Addressing feminization of poverty due to neoliberal structures and the adjustment policies. Reduction of gender gap in education. Reproductive and child health and child sex ratio. These are a lot of indicators that are glaring that the gap exists and we still need to work on it. And Vibhuti Madam already talked about the intersectionalities. And when it comes to female, you feel, okay, you may be a working woman, but when you go back home, your power is not as much as it was in the department. You are calling shots, but there you're being called shots at. And you have to do other things besides whatever you are doing. And nothing condones because you are someone up here in the hierarchy in the department. But when you go, you see the intersectionality. Everybody goes through a vulnerability cycle. So the race, gender, economy, age, job, and other interacting factors add on to it. Especially in COVID-19, I'd like to bring to notice that 1 million frontline workers from low middle income countries, they were literally the heroines. They were unsung heroines. And they came forward, they put up their life at stake, and they went around doing so much good for community at the cost of being hit by police and every violence heaped onto them. So many of them who were there, because they were literally at the lower end of the poverty line, they had to fend for the family, but that did not absolve them of the responsibility of home care. When they reached home, they still had to do the cooking and caring, which continued on. So this is just to give you a glimpse of how when times get tough, it gets tougher on women. So this is one of the cartoons I really like, which depicts how a woman was working during COVID-19. When people tried, okay, we're sitting and ordering where some are privileged class, whereas for the woman, there is no help around. And there is people to take care, but you have much and more domestic care, children care, for the bedridden aged family members, the cooking, the house chore to do, and even home becomes a den of violence because of the mounting frustration within the four walls. So, and also physical and mental issues in pandemic. So I'm talking about pandemic just to relate that something goes wrong, like war or pandemic condition, then the woman is pushed to the brink. And so the gap widens more. So the lockdown resulted in people being grounded home all the time, physical burden increased, cooking and every other demand went on more, and then the domestic work hours increased. There was a complete burnout for many of the women. It was like post-COVID, if you talk to somebody, they will tell you, oh, I just don't want to be reminded of it. That talks about like a post-traumatic stress that they still carry, that they still need to be talked out to, catharsis done, and they need to express their angst and anguish. Otherwise, they will bottle it as an anxiety symptom. And physical, mental, and reproductive health issues. So whenever we talk of peak in maternal mortalities, they are caused by access to healthcare services. As in case of the pandemic, so also will be in case of wars and any other violence, the access to the healthcare is first thing. In fact, in Afghanistan, we realized even the Red Cross help wasn't forthcoming. There were no women who were women could not come on the roads even to give aid. that means women cannot access the aid. If men are coming, they're not free to go and access it. So some way slowly, you cut down every little ventilatory hope that people have during the wars and times like in pandemics. So that is why it affected, especially in the menstrual hygiene of the young girls. Parents decided to withhold provision of certain commodities. The girls suffered most because the sanitary pads were not on the essential list. But then how would a teenage girl cope? What are the other mechanisms? Rise in number of teenage pregnancies. And a teenage pregnancy literally sets back a girl by 10 or 15, 10 years of schooling, literally. Because at teenage, you get pulled out. You, for some reasons, you don't feel like going back. Then your education stops at that level. What hope can you have of taking up a job, a better job to help your family? And more than half the women, they cannot decide what is to be done with their own body. They are pregnant, they don't want, but then abortion is a far-reaching thing. It's not available to them. So that has resulted into feminization of poverty. So feminization of poverty is this concept where women are disproportionately represented among the world's poorest people. And in times like this, the poverty strikes much more. And they are literally falling into the abyss of poverty more and more with no hope of return. One major factor is a gender wage gap, where women are often paid less than men for the same work. And sometimes when women are so desperate, they are paid only half the wage because anyway, she's ready to work. So it is not on what is she deserving, what are her rights, but rather what is the lowest minimum she's ready to work for. We can pay only that much, but you are pushing her into more and more in the poverty abyss. Women are also more likely to work in very low paying jobs, part-time jobs, informal sectors of the economy, which offer little job security and benefits. Yes, the other day I was reading about this BTech graduate who took up to Uber cab because she wanted to support her family, be there whenever they called, and want to be along with family, not go to some other place for job and have another establishment. So you can imagine the condition of being somehow employed, the force, the compulsion of being anyhow, whatever I get, it's okay, good enough, I'll start with it. So women are often responsible for caring for children and other family members also. And this limits their work time outside, their earning capacity. But at the same time, their work is taken for granted. They're not even considered as somebody who's benefiting the household. And there is also neoliberal economic policy. And this has again pushed women at the brink of economy. There's a shift in economy from regulation model to liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Even in COVID-19, people who were very savvy with computers, they could get easily a job, but those who were doing like a ticketing and a travel agency were left jobless. So 8% of the workers are in the formal sector, whereas 92% are in the informal sector. The lower supply price of these workers provide material basis for induction of poor working class urban labor into export industries, electronics, garments, sports, toys, and agro industries. Many a times you find a girl is barely 16 or 17, she's happy to get a job. But then I feel when she takes up this job, there is no growth happening because she gets stuck out here into the grind of daily working, coming back home, making food and helping others. But how will she even go up the ladder? She will going to be on the lowest rung of the ladder. So that is what happens when they're employed, all right. As far as numbers are concerned, it might look a tremendous amount of ladies are employed, but is it even gainful employment for them? And gender inequality in healthcare. Actually, when you talk of healthcare, you see a huge, huge gap, which should be remedied proactively. 985 million women in 2020 will be aged 50 and over. In 2050, the figure will raise to 1.65 billion. In 2020, total female population was 3.8 billion, and the estimate for 2050 is 4.8 billion. So when we talk of women's health, can we even name 4 diseases which commonly affect women? No, we are only interested in reproductive health and anemia, because it doesn't even come in the discussion at a higher level. So gender inequality in healthcare, sex and gender differences are relevant to many medical disciplines and all aspects of well-being and healthcare. Because again, when you look at health, what is health? It's physical, mental, social, psychological well-being, and not absence of just a disease or infirmity. And to that, we also have added an emotional and spiritual component. But how many of us, frankly speaking, me included, when I was taking training as an intern, as a houseman, when women used to walk in, our seniors, so-called males, used to tell us, don't waste more than 2 minutes. If it's pain in the body, multivitamin B complex, let them go. And I used to wonder, she's a 22-year-old girl. She has 2 children. She has no business to have headache, body ache at such a young age. So unless you think everybody requires to be seen diligently, and don't just whitewash them as weakness and anemia. Otherwise, we would miss out on a lot of diagnostics. And just because they come to government healthcare, it doesn't mean we should deprive them of their right to a good level of healthcare. So we need, time is needed to assess comparable medical diagnosis. And for several years, we do a lot of diagnostics for men, but when it comes to women, first thing we think is she's weak. Because of childbirth, she's having anemia. These are a presumptive diagnosis, even before we ask questions. And if the answer happens to be yes, she has 4 children, then we have made up our mind, don't worry, it is just anemia. So we need to move out of that. We need to move out of our own stereotyping diagnostics when we are looking at women. So in European countries, number of unhealthy years with aging starts earlier in women than men. So also in India, but the question is, women don't complain because they have a higher tolerance for pain. They take pain to a great extent because they have been through childbirth, and for them it's comparable, and there's nothing compared to that. So as a result, they're noticing their own health failing is only when it's much advanced. So they go on limping and doing the work till limp becomes unbearable. They go on bending and doing the work till they cannot do it anymore. So these are where a woman learns that I have to be the breadwinner, the food provider, no matter what. And this pushes her more and more to suffer longer before even she reports to the OPD. And when she reports, things aren't much easy. From 2 months, 3 months, okay, now you've had the time to come. What were you doing all this while? Anyway, get these investigations done. Oh, this is anemia, looks like. You take this and you'll be all right. So it is estimated from a study that the medical graduates, especially if they're male, they try to ignore the symptoms of females to a great extent because of their intuitive diagnosis of its weakness, childbearing, menopause, menarche, and all those physiological conditions. If it is men, they take more seriously. Same thing even with a neurosurgeon on record who has made a narrative in the BMJ that she had a severe headache and she was asking her colleagues to write her for a CT scan of the head. And they went on telling, no, don't worry, you're over anxious, nothing. After 5 years, when they wrote the CT scan, she already had a tumor in stage 3. And she is a neurosurgeon. So we need to know that many a times our symptoms are not taken seriously because of the gender itself. Women in general, although they live longer, because many times men make snide remarks. If something is wrong, then how come they live longer than men? Men die early. But then the life is not always with good quality life years. And gender inequality in healthcare, especially certain diseases and conditions like fibromyalgia, for that instance. So it's a chronic fatigue syndrome and a psychosocial distress. It occurs more in women. But in clinical practice, many times, people don't even pay attention to it. There is no clear explanation for specific symptoms for many of women over 50 years, and many of them attach it to menopause. So barriers to regular healthcare, often economic reasons, also prevent women during their reproductive years. And the prolapses and other things which require surgical intervention because of the fear and a kind of not having a refined language to give their symptoms. Many ladies don't even express it. And they're talking in terms of, I feel something happening, I feel weak, I feel stressful, but they're indirectly hinting that a part of my uterus or a body keeps coming out every time I strain. But unless you're trained to dissect what the symptomatology, you won't even be getting to halfway through the history. So in non-communicable diseases, even factors like hypertension have become leading cause of mortality and morbidity. Today, even the myocardial infarction, heart attack in the young has become, when the women has become very common. Initially, we used to say the estrogen gives a cover. So generally women do not have myocardial infarction, but that has also proven wrong. It is having an effect on them. So health inequalities are linked to socio-cultural factors negatively impact physiologically significant difference between men and women. What we read in textbooks mostly come from the Europe and UK data and American data. May not hold good in all cases. If there is a scientific paper, it doesn't necessarily get translated into textbook. It doesn't find its way in the textbook. So I still refer to UK, US and other authors and say, okay, but this nowhere it says that myocardial infarction is more common in women. But the single determinant is a sociocultural factor. And it impacts in a way that physiologically you cannot say why, but it does impact. And if you don't know why, it doesn't mean you shouldn't write it in the textbooks. So as a result, we are missing out on a lot of things that we can see, but we don't find the equivalent of it in the books. So we try to ignore it or hide it under the cover. So gender discrimination systematically undermines access to healthcare for reasons that are very few people have a financial resources. So they do not go to hospital for the same reason. And when we talk of gender, including transgender, we have to have them on our side. We are not actually females in the true sense of philosophy if we don't include transgenders as a part of us. Why so? Because whenever there is a structural hierarchy, those who are enjoying the hierarchy are not much bothered about those who are deprived of a position. If somebody asks, I don't like to take a caste by name, but I will somebody on a higher caste, how come you are allowed entry right into it and you can go right into the Garbhagudi that is right inside the sanctum sanctorum? He said, don't ask me. God hasn't created me like this. I'm higher caste. But if he was in the low caste, would he say the same thing? But God created everybody. He did not make the difference. We made it. So now we've decided male and female are only two genders. That is our scotopic tubular vision, which is very, very narrow vision. So now when it's time to widen the vision, those who are benefited from being at a superior gender, will they even consider including them? And we who are in the lower rung, we still find transgender at much lower rung. So does that give us more advantage? And we don't want to include them with us. Is that also our psychology? Because you ask many women that don't you think they're also like you? No, they're not like us. But why not? Why not? Because if I were made imperfect for some reason, or I had a perfect body, but a mind that didn't agree with my external morphology, and I felt misfit and I wanted to change, would I have my brothers, sisters tell me, no, 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 you're not a part of us? Or rather say, let's find out what is it that we can help you nurture, we can nurture you to become a nice person following your ambitions. But do we do that? Because even the household, with whatever the person of the head of the family, they just discard a transgender person the moment they start transitioning. So I find it, where is our respect to humanity? Where is our respect to a human person? Do we have to go to university to understand this? to respect a fellow human being? Is it taught in university? Or we have to inculcate it? It is something that we have to question ourselves. How good a human I am? Is it okay for me to be very comfortable, cushy, and look at others and discriminate? Once you start looking at your own biases, that is the day you will start improving in your own moral barometer. You will find enormous scope for self-improvement. You don't have to improve others, but it starts here. But it has to happen when you question, what are my biases? Today, if a transgender walks into my house and says, can you give me a job? Do you say, okay, fine. If you have the qualification, I have a job. Do we say that? Because this is one of our beginning experiments, thought experiments, when we do philosophy teaching in bioethics in the first classes. That what if they come for a job? Would you give a receptionist job? No, her voice may sound different, but so what? My voice is hoarser than theirs. In fact, I talk to them and say, if 10 of you sit and I speak, nobody can call me a female because my voice is so hoarse. So I said, these are all the things, if you dissect out, ultimately we are all imperfect creatures. But what makes us good is we have to have solidarity with our fellow human beings. Not necessarily be man or a woman, but even transgender, lesbians, gay, bisexuals, intersex, plus, everything on the spectrum of humanity, we have to be respectful to them. That is why once we have that attitude, then we do not differentiate on a high and a low socioeconomic status or on a gender basis. And when we talk of countries with low socio-demographic index, the highest cardiovascular diseases mortality is now shifting to women. So women with cardiovascular disease are still considered along with male standard worldwide, but it's time we made a difference. That it has to start appearing, one has to be more conversant and has to be paying more attention to it. So about women and gender, 25 years after the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, gender equality is still neglected in public health and many areas of healthcare, especially in the development SDG 3 health and SDG 5 gender equality. They are the cornerstones to improve women's health. You cannot do one without the other. They are very nicely, tightly interlinked. So health and gender equality, or equity for that matter. Unless you put them together and you have your action pointers, then it's not good. We are not going to be successful. Anti-gender campaigners have gone so far as trying to overturn existing laws on basic human rights. It's my body. We are ready to say, I want to die. Euthanasia. I've had enough of life, but you cannot say, I want to abort. How double standards is that? You can take away your life. Nobody cares. But then your child's, no, we care, we don't care for your child, but you can't have that right. So how can you even say that these are basic fundamental human rights? Gender norms are essential in creating pathways for better health outcomes, and they're the key in realizing sustainable development challenges for health. So we need to work towards how are we making the gender norms, how are we making them work, and how can we be the leaders of change? Where all can we look into and say, this is my area of concern, I shall work in this area, try to make a change out here. Because when we started looking at COVID, we said we must look at COVID and transgender people. Unless we get down to understanding their problem, how can we be sure next pandemic, the same thing won't happen to them? So that is how we need to look at who are the most affected, should be the first one, top on the agenda, to find out what we can do for them. So gender norms are society's spoken and unspoken rules and behavior of girls, boys, men, women, and how they should act. But we also should question ourselves, are we propagating the gender norms? When we go to a girl's birthday, we only take Barbie dolls. When we go to a boy's birthday, we give a mechanized toy. Is this how society is endorsing a stereotyping? Or would you like to have a girl pick, what would you like? These are the things. But many a times we stereotype it. This is called the learned behavior. A child learns this from the parents and it propagates the same thing. Unless the child decides to question the parents' behavior, the child is not going to question its own behavior. So the gender norms are challenged in families, communities, schools, workplaces, institutions, and media. Many years back when we moved to Mangalore, HIV was not very, very popularly treated. What I mean is not about the popularity of a disease, but treatment. Treatment options were very, very narrowed down when my husband, because his first thesis was on HIV/AIDS. So he used to admit the patient in the morning, and by evening, the patient would be forced discharged. So when he came to know, he used to come in the evening to stand near the bus stand, readmit them and say, tomorrow morning, I'm coming for rounds. So somewhere you need to make a change. Where is this happening and how best can we stop this? So the socio-cultural expectations start very early in life, and they powerfully shape the attitudes, opportunities, experiences, behaviors with essential health consequence throughout the life course. We all have a standing in society. But do we judiciously use it when we talk about transgender, when we talk about health access, when we talk about the vulnerable, when we talk about the deprived? So can we make up a solidarity plan that with our own group, we are going to work towards this in this particular year? So health institutions reinforce gender inequalities in healthcare delivery and division of labor in the workforce. Women are disproportionately socially conditioned into care roles. In fact, the other day I was speaking at a gender, walking into women's shoes in forensic medicine. And the first thing I said as a postgraduate, it came as a shock to me when our bosses, because I was the first lady in forensic medicine, and whenever our bosses got their wives, I used to literally sit with them and chat, even though I had a class, because I had to spend time with them. Somebody got a child, they were left in my care. And then they used to do their work. In spite of me having classes and other supervision, I had to tag along with these children. So they expect this care role to go on, even when you're in a professional role. Once when I applied for a 2 days leave, because when I became a postgraduate, I started a tea club. For this reason, that we don't have to waste time going for tea, half an hour, 1 hour, we can save time so we can continue to work. And as a girl, I was never going to tea clubs anyway, to outside, roadside. So when I started this, when I asked for leave, I was told, who will wash the cups, who will make the tea if you take leave? So we fit into gender roles, but people should not stereotype us. And if they start doing that, it is time to wake up. And don't let that happen. So even in the workforce, you should be very careful about these. And the recent global COVID-19 crisis has shown again how important these hardworking women are in patient care. But only thing is that loads and loads of care. And they had unending responsibility. And I'm not very happy because they did not get what they deserved in the end. So women working in the healthcare, especially, they're underrepresented in jobs with increased pay and leadership positions. Most women hold position with little power to change systems, organization, or their careers, which may lead to work stress and job dissatisfaction. Once I was told in earlier workplace, which I worked for about 10 years, that you women are always talking about women's rights. But you know, our college has nearly 1,200 women. I said, yeah, but of the 800 were all Safai and other Karmacharis. You know, you're not taking them at a high level where you're taking as HODs and professors and things like that. So you don't count them as women because you're not encouraging them to do better. You want them to be in the leadership position. You encourage them even in the workplace, how best they can achieve what they have to. In fact, in our own workplace, we have some of these people who are washing, who have gone to do their BA. And they're completing, and so in fact, they feel proud that they're getting a degree or something. So that is an education that they couldn't do before, but we should always encourage to the women, because that solidarity with women is very, very important. Less likely than men to work in higher paying specialties or be offered the same opportunities, because whenever, in fact, sometimes I was told that I was passed over for promotion, and they said, no, I'm sure you wouldn't take it because that means more hard work. But whoever told that I'm not working hard? How do you decide I'm not hardworking? So it is your own way. So somebody tells me, you know any people wanting to join forensic, please tell me. But we don't want ladies. I said, why? Because they'll have a childbirth. And I said, but who makes them pregnant anyway? It's a question of the gender is so deeply rooted that when we, in a workplace, we need to be very sensitive and we have to speak against those who are having such a discriminatory attitude. Fewer maternal and newborn deaths and better cardiac patient care is what we require, because we need to refocus on how we look at women's symptoms. And don't just discard them because they come in large number in OPD in a hospital, or because you think that it could be this, and by health outcomes are negatively impacted by gender discrimination. WHO report in March 29 emphasizes that women account for the 75% of health and social care workers, but only 25% of them hold roles, leadership roles. So then what happens when I go to a male doctor, if he has got a kind of stereotypic this thing that I'm having menopausal symptoms, he's not even going to deeply investigate me. So female values are something that they try to uphold, and we should be conscious about it. Societal values are predominantly based on masculine ideals and characteristics. Madam already told the toxic testosterone, very beautifully she explained. Men are considered more assertive, focused, competitive, action-oriented, ambitious, and driven to achieve material success. Whereas women are supposed to be more of creative, empathetic, nurturing, compassionate. It's like playing second fiddle for that matter. Give support, give support. So you are not to be seen in front. Somebody else is in front, but you can always be there to clap for them. So women are focused on results, process itself, and mutual connection. This is their strength. That is why in the leadership role, even during the COVID times, the countries where women were heading fared much better because they look at humanity first, care first, and because the care ethics actually evolved from the way women tend to another. So these are the female values. When you look at female values in healthcare, life course, prevention, and illness. Whereas when you look at gender equality, we have to respect the diversity. So just don't say men and women are equal. Then where do you put the transgender? So do you also discount for the, or do you recognize the diversity in the genders? So existential dimension, we say, okay, as long as she's living, okay, chalti ka naam gaadi, but make it better in the quality of care. So every day, let it count. And also help wherever you can in the career development. And education, just not for the degree, but for economic independence. So it's important that we should recognize the interdependence of the female over species and including the transgender. And we need to do what we can to nurture and also break the stereotyping in healthcare. Now, gender justice is creating the world where everyone has freedom and opportunity to fully realize their potential, regardless of gender identity or expression. So gender sensitization should begin early at home and schools. We all should relook at whether in our homes, are we sensitized enough? Or we say, okay, in the movie, it was very well depicted, but no, we don't want transgender at home. So that would be a double standard. That means you're ready to give lip service. It's called sympathy, but not empathy, getting into the mindset of another and trying to understand their feelings. Medical colleges should nurture gender sensitivity and encourage gender equality by providing equal opportunities to access to resources, to investigation, diagnostics, and free of their mindsets. Educate people about gender inequality and its harmful effects on individual and society. It just bites the society. Society can't be happy with gender inequality. And ultimately, the gender stereotypes and promote positive representation. You have to challenge these and representation of genders in the media and society. Because foster open, honest dialogue about gender issues, creating a safe space for individuals to share their experiences, provide support for victims of gender-based violence. I come from forensic. I know of a time when a person who was sexually assaulted was literally blamed for being the reason for the exploitation. She must have encouraged, she must have dressed, she must have smiled, she must have given them a come on signal. It's like a double jeopardy. A person who is already in the brink, you push them to the brink saying it is your fault. So we have to grow over it and say it is not fault finding, but how best we can help. Enforce laws that protect against discrimination based on gender, such as laws prohibiting sexual harassment, domestic violence, unequal pay, and including what Madam rightly quoted, that when you sexually assault a transgender and you make a difference in the punishment, why? And then how are you saying that they should be respected as a gender? So empower women by promoting this. So in the key strategies are increase access to healthcare. We are coming almost to the end of the presentation. Just a minute. the first thing we can do is improve the healthcare coverage. The paltry GDP we have on the healthcare is not enough. The health should be a robust mechanism where they can access healthcare, have a better facilities for accessing, an increasing number of healthcare professionals, and in the especially underserved areas, and also females as doctors, nurses, because we have a plenty of nurses. But at the higher level in this thing, no, it doesn't happen. It's the kind of a it amounts to a trickle. Addressing socioeconomic factors contributing to health disparities such as poverty, lack of access to education, job opportunities, housing instability, and food insecurity. Because when we don't address the bigger picture, when we try to do only a small amount of action, it is like putting a sticking plaster where you needed a proper bandage. It doesn't stay, but it looks like something has been done, but the rot has set in. And it's not same as giving a thorough dressing and a bandage. So you need to look at the bigger picture, how they play a role in addressing these issues by working with community organization, policymakers, and with understanding the social determinants. So they should work to provide culturally and linguistically appropriate care, because many of the tribal population, I had interviewed a lady who had undergone breast amputation because of cancer breast. And she said she did not know that they're going to remove her breast. I said, how come? They take your consent, right? She said, yeah. So what did they tell you? So it was her own son who translated. And when son talks to the mother in that tribal language, they don't talk about breast and genitals and things like that. So he told her, surgery will be done what is required. And she said, okay. She thought it's going to be somewhere in the stomach, because she used to have severe pain in the stomach, but the primary was in the breast. So this is what happens when people access healthcare, but even people who are ready to talk to them do not ensure that the patient has understood. It is not the son's duty to make her understand. It is our duty. And how do we make it work? We can ask the patient, what do you know about what is going to happen tomorrow? That is the level at which only then it's called healthcare. Otherwise, it would be more like any other service delivered, heartlessly or anyway. So the key strategies: invest in prevention and wellness programs to help reduce incidence of chronic diseases and other health issues, promote healthy behaviors, provide immunization and screenings, and address environmental factors promoting to ill health. Potable drinking water is not there. One has to walk a long distance in the sun and in rain and slip and have other morbidities. So these are something that needs to be addressed. Empowering women with knowledge and skill to manage health by providing health education, including the menstruation, menarche, menopause, what preventive actions can be taken, how the health can be sustained by them. And healthcare providers should be trained to recognize and respond gender-based violence and promote support and resource women who have experienced gender-based violence. And this is not happening. We have come across a lot of studies where there are people, that this person has been kicked by the husband, she cannot walk, but then the doctors say, what is the point of going back to husband? Because again, she has to go back, he will kick her more. They don't even register it as a gender-based violence. It has to, because police complaint has to be made. So that way, the numbers we are looking at are not representative of the domestic violence. They're not representative of gender-based violence. Why? Because we don't have a social system. So people think it's frustrating. Why should we even report? Who cares? So this has again put us back into like a debt cycle. The incidence of gender-based violence goes up, but the morbidity, mortality is more, but it doesn't get accounted for. So in the end, this is like a game where you have set one line and say, get, set, go, and you're going to see who is the best runner. Because to ensure a fair selection, you all get the same test. You must all climb a tree. But then we are all diverse people with diverse skills. So you cannot have one size fits all kind of test. So we need to accept diversity and see how best we can do to help people in the different groups, than trying to look at one line and that tells us you're more than 5 feet, you go here, less than 5 feet malnourished, you go there. That is not it. So that's the end of my presentation. I take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, it is a very rare combination that we listen a doctor in a feminist conference or a feminism conference and talking about these things. One thing that is coming to most of the participants' mind, I can see the questions and coming to me as well, is that even today we have our ladies who are working day and night in the office also and at homes also, and they are not taking care of their own health because they think that the health of their family is the priority, should
Very
be the
important.
priority, because that's how they have been brought up and trained. How do we, I should ask, how do you cater to these things, and how do you sensitize these ladies or such ladies? Is it possible that we are sometime near in the future, will we be able to change these things?
Thank you for the question. It's a very nice thought-provoking question, because the question is, a lady has been brought up thinking that you give everything, you give up everything to give something. So this is not something that is tenable. The actual behavior, like you say, I always compare it to the announcement in the flight, that whenever there's a air pressure change, the mask will come down. And before you put for others, put for yourself. So how am I seeing that others are helped if my own health is in jeopardy? And I love myself. And we all must inculcate that philosophy, that because of me, my family stays healthy. I don't want them to pity me and say, oh, my mom, she's suffering, but she's doing it. I want them to see my mom is a role model of good health. I want to emulate her. That's why today, even if it's 5:30 in the morning, I hit my gym, because that's the only time I get, 5:30 to 6:30, no other time. So now I know that my daughter is in Germany, but she's also emulated that it's a very important thing to be a part of having a health regime. So, I mean, we set the examples, and we shouldn't be more rational than emotional. Emotions one side, but rationality helps you to dissect the thoughts. Because at two different occasions, I could have been ill, but I narrowly escaped because I went for a checkup right in time. So I make it a point to tell everybody, please go for a checkup, it helps. And go to a person who really cares to check thoroughly. And not just somebody who says, okay, lady in 40s, 50s, okay, could be this, could be. No, a thorough examination is important. So I think we all must, as a leaders of change, insist that I love myself. I show that I love myself by caring for my health. And only when I care for my health can I care for health of others. If I have to set that model in my daughter, I don't want her to look at me as a victim model. I want her to look at me as somebody who has conquered the obstacles and she's triumphing over it. So yeah, it's a very interesting question.
Yes. And I want to ask this question to the previous speaker, ma'am, too, that how do we sensitize these things in the students? Because even now when we talk to the students, they're not ready to talk about feminism. They think it's not a very real concept and something very close to idealism and things like that. How do we inculcate these things in the students?
I think we should continue to talk about it, because I believe that even if you can change few people, those few make a difference. And I always believe in a small change in the long run sustains than a tsunami like big change. We make 2-3 big banner programs and after that nothing happens, no activity. And students follow leaders who are consistently doing the same thing. Then once in a while they do it and then they forget about it. Because I am very nice question, because somebody in the university at a high level once told me that this feminism, at least they told me, you of all the people should not be talking about it. I said, I of all the people should be talking about it. Because I have had my own fair share of obstacles, but I have gotten over it. The other day I was giving a guest lecture in a criminology conference. And I said the forensic challenges. And there's some couple of girls who came to meet me and they said, it was wonderful you spoke because we were thinking of changing the subject. Then I said, don't change the subject, because when you're nearing the bend of the road, you might think it is the end of the road. It may not be the end. Take a step back, reassess. Subject will not give you anything. It is your passion to the subject that gives you something. So we are wrong in thinking, is cardiology good? Yeah. Is forensic bad? No. It's what are you taking to the subject that matters. You create a niche, you create the necessity, you create audience. So I think it was very right when I told him, I think I, of all the people, I've had the good and the bad. And so I don't want to give up, because after having said that, then I went to Lucknow for a conference and I was doing for a workshop. And then I meet a girl with similar name as mine, and she's joined the forensic, and she tells me, ma'am, you are an inspiration. Somebody said you are in forensic and you have survived it. So I said, see, when I entered forensic, they said, why did you enter forensic? You are better at making rotis. You better make rotis at home, keep family happy. Did they tell you? She said, yes, they told me. Then I said, this is the place to start, because you have lots to do out here. So whenever challenges come, I think we need to step up. Because when going gets tough, the tough get going. We don't back out. So it's important that when he said that, because there was a program that would be jeopardized if he held that belief. But I had to tell him that we are going to make a huge difference, because even if you have gone through good, bad, ugly, but understanding, talking, providing a forum for it and listening to others is a huge thing. And it's a great learning experience. So that's how I was able to talk to him.
On the same lines, ma'am, on behalf of the participants, I'd also like to ask you about the stereotyping that happens. It happens in the workplace, it happens with the kids. How do we handle, or how do you, especially as a doctor, how do you suggest people not to do these things? And, how can we reduce these things?
Yeah, actually, I'm very sensitive to stereotyping, because I think people in other professions are partly affected by stereotyping. People in forensic can ruin the lives of another by stereotyping. Because when I entered my profession as an assistant professor, somehow I got incidentally called for a guest lecture, barely 6 months down being an assistant professor, maybe because I was the only female. And then before me, my predecessor with 30 years experience was telling, if a lady comes and complains about report, don't believe her. I was shocked. I said, what are you teaching him? In the middle of the guest lecture, I said, I want to bring this up. I said, I'm alarmed that you're saying if a lady complains of sexual assault, don't believe her. Why? Because ladies can always complain. Can, but it doesn't mean they will always. So I said, knowing something and not knowing something, wouldn't it be better to say, be humane, be compassionate, listen to the complaint, take all the investigation, and let it be decided after examining. Why would you like to share that I don't believe you? So then she will not even go to give you the history in detail. So for me, stereotyping and biases could be the greatest enemies to have. You cannot be a professional with that. I'm also aware there's a Project Innocence, if you can look up, where nearly 175 African men were pushed to death penalty. And then there was this Etiole Dror who made us research. He gave a case scenario, and he's beautifully constructed a case with all rich scenarios. And he said the white man was killed, and it was the black man who killed him. And the forensic experts, nearly 70% said the black man should be given death penalty. And next, he switched the case, and he said the black man was killed, the white man had done it, and then 20% said that he should get a death penalty. But the case is same. Evidence is same. But this is the bias. He was trying to show how bias impacts us. So for me, what I do, the next part of your question, how do I tell, is whenever somebody says something, I say, sure, because I have an alternate model. I don't agree with your stereotyping. We should, every day, when the student walks in, I give him a fresh lease. I don't say he's a repeater, he's a failure, he's a chronic person. I always say today, because he wants to change today, how can I strap him to yesterday and day before? So that is why we should not bring into picture what was yesterday and day before. This is one of the reasons our rape laws did not take into consideration, where in other countries, it's a Rape Shield Act, where you don't take the past history. But in India, for many, many years, we always took the past. Oh, she's like that. Her behavior is bad. Then everybody has a right to rape her. So this is something that we need to be very conscious of. And so in the families, even with children, when we are stereotyping, we should point them gently. This is called stereotype. And we can show you an alternate way where this is not the case. But if you're already made up your mind, you'll only believe hits and not the misses. A person taking a wrong turning and somebody from here telling that that must be a female. But it's a 50 chance that it could be a female or a male or something for that matter. So it doesn't really mean that females are bad drivers. But this is how we do the stereotyping. Yeah. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, ma'am. There's a question from one of the participants, Dr. Santosh Kaul. He's asking that, is there any initiative or policy from the government for the women in the healthcare?
Actually, healthcare is a state matter. It is left to the state departments to put certain activities in place, because there are for certain tribal people. They're not accessing it, that's another thing. But as such, otherwise, healthcare pretty much goes on what is called the camp model of healthcare. We would like to do a cancer camp, we do the cervix camp and things like that. But it is not like a beneficiary model that it is helping. But now with the BPL cards, many of the ladies are accessing many of the healthcare that is available. But as such, we don't have a connect going into the thick of the community and talking to them. It's again like we have 25 centers which are called the RHCDCs, Rural Health Centers. And there our people go to talk and then examine and bring them to the hospital. So many of the medical college setup, tertiary care centers have peripheral health units, even in the thick of the rural areas. But I'm also aware that not everything is accessible to many people. Even coming to that areas would require still another 2 hours journey to come there. So I could say that there isn't one that we could say that literally meets up all the expectation.
I think Dr. Anita has a question.
Madam, that was really a very interesting session, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Madam, Professor Vibhuti has also talked about a bottom-up approach instead of top-down approach. But my concern here is that that is true. We need a bottom-up approach, but we also find that in the urban areas, women are still, they're accepting their state, their status quo. And there is that still that sexist and that discrimination, and they say that they accept it. Even I have come across people from very educated background. They are working as professors across all the spectrum of the society. And they take it as their fate, or they accept it. It's okay. Why we should change? So where do you think the change should come from? It should come from the society, from when we are as a child. That mindset has to be changed. And when will that societal revolution really come?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking question. Many of them.
You're not audible.
Can you hear now?
Yeah, now I can hear.
Yeah. So it's a very thought-provoking question. The question is, when we say many accept it, it's also because they do not see an alternate pathway. They may not have much openings, or they may have tried once or twice and given up because it didn't work. Or when they tried, the repercussion was worse than when they started. It is like telling a transgender person, you come to my hospital, nothing will happen. We are all there for you. But when they land there, if you are not there, they have a bad experience. Then twice again, you call them, they will not come back. Then they will say, it's okay, we don't mind. We don't want to go. We'll just take something that is available. So that is also a way of making peace with the existing situation for them without losing their mental cool. But
so we find the situation, yes, madam, also in very developed countries. They're treated in as a second-class citizens. If you take the example of extremely advanced US or the other kind, and discrimination, crime against women is very high.
Yeah.
So why do we call them advanced?
I would like to bring to intersectionality even there in the crime against women, because many a times there are layers and layers that push them into the vulnerability state. So even though they have, like I say, that they have not committed a crime, okay? Even that, let us say, crime against a woman, but they have a strong party against whom they're going to fight. They have eyewitnesses, but still eyewitnesses don't give evidence at that moment. So the whole system, sometimes they find it is loaded against them because of the biases of the judges.
Yes.
Many a times we find that people don't want to go to lawyers for the very reason that it just makes you go back by lakhs of rupees. It doesn't assure you justice. In the end, you might even come back with name more spoiled, more infamous than you ventured into. So what is required is a robust system which upholds them, and which are, even in, for that matter, forensic, I don't have much confidence when it comes to sexual assault. Of the last string of cases with Hathras, you have a list of them. Nothing worked. And the
But
police.
where does this robust system comes, ma'am?
I think
Who
it
is going
comes.
to evolve this robust
Yeah,
system?
yeah. So what happened sometime back in 1985, in 1990s, the forensic evolution which took place, it was done for doctors, lawyers, police, judiciary together. But today when we talk, we don't talk of a medical legal system that is evolved. We only talk of doctors, forensic
Correct.
people. We talk of only the lawyers. We are not in connect with us. So we are not looking at it as a ring or a tripod on which a camera rests. Or justice
Correct.
should rest on the tripod, or justice for the camera if you have to take this thing. But then here the tripod is not evenly based. So as a society, sometimes I have so much complaint that we are not going forward. Our whole raison d'etre, the reason for living has been like living through election to election. And it's not a welfare state things that percolates deep down into 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from there. It's very much a politicized version of their own way of how to come into. But I feel like Vibhuti ma'am, there are a lot of intellectuals who can be brought to table only for discussion, how best we can improve the situation. So
Right.
what is required is re-looking at the healthcare, including the allocation up to that. But then when it comes to justice system, we also then look at medical legal systems. Why is it happening? How are the bias of the judges? How come the judges say that, okay, divorce should be given, and because the wife did not serve hot cup of tea and things like that. So is this even based on evidence? Or it's eminence? Because I'm a judge, I can say so. So we need to now look at differences, because a lot of activism is required at different levels by intellectuals. And only when there is a summation, maybe it will affect in a positive way. What do you think, Vibhuti ma'am?
Budgetary, look, I fully agree that unless we have a functionaries, nothing can happen. So whatever gender commitments we are making, they have to translate into budgetary commitments, and at the same time political will, because Nirbhaya fund, you have 1,000 crore per year parked in the ministry, it doesn't reach the women survivor of violence. So I think that political will also has to be created. It can be done through legislation and through pressure of the public. That is.
Because many people look at women who are kind of activists as Mahila Mandal. Just
Yes.
give a very cursory, come and meet later. We have other important things to do. What important thing can you have?
Yes.
Because it is the woman who is literally making the family. She's working for it. She's the backbone of the family. But that is the mindset, again, comes to biases and stereotyping, so yeah.
No, that's what we are.
Thank Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I thank both the speakers, Professor Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, and Professor Veena Vaswani, ma'am. The session was really interesting, both the sessions, and we have a lot of participants thanking both of you for such an interesting, mind-boggling session that we faced today. I think we have come to the end of the first day of our 1 week International Faculty Development Program on accelerating equality and empowerment of women in all spheres.
I'll send the PPT immediately to you.
Yes, you can send the PPT, and we'll share the PPT with all the
And
participants.
you will get ready-made email IDs, because I have included you also. So that whole list of email IDs with you. Just you can send it in a reply mode and attach
Right.
your PPT.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the information of the participants. Tomorrow we'll start at the same time, and we'll go on till 5:30. That is Uzbekistan time 5:30, India time would be 6. And
Thank you
starting time.
very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
Again, for
tomorrow
the,
there are three presentations.
there are 2.
Two. So 2 to 3:30 and 3:30 to 5.
Right, ma'am.
Today also you will close. But you can
For the information of the participants, again, tomorrow we'll be sending the feedback form and the attendance like we sent it today through the chat box. So whenever there'll be question answer session, we'll be sending you the feedback form and attendance so that you can fill it then and there. Thank you. I request the IT team to please close the
Okay, ma'am.
session.
Thank you. Brilliant session.